Hello, Merry Christmas, and welcome to episode 205 of the Book Binge. Yes, I know today is December 26th. That is technically after Christmas, but this is where this video falls because all of the rest of the videos for this month were already done and basically edited and organized by the time I was getting tagged for the Christmas music book tag, which I've kind of renamed in my own way to make it a little bit more appropriate for my channel, or rather to, make it kind of feel like it fits the vibe of my channel a little bit better. The reason why I don't do a lot of tags and is not just because I'm not super into tags in the first place, but also because my video schedule is pretty packed as is, and it's very difficult to just throw in extra videos randomly. But this time around it happened to work out because the original video planned for today was very different, and I hadn't actually prepared it yet by the time the tag came. So here we are doing something a little bit different and a little bit more eccentric, we shall say. If you don't know the concept of book tags on YouTube, you're watching this video, I'd be surprised if you don't. But basically how a tag works is if somebody tags your channel in a book tag, you basically have to do the tag yourself. It's a tag you're it kind of thing. And usually tag videos encompass a series of questions related to the topic of whatever the tag's title is. You answer the questions, you tag a few people, and then you move on. I'm not going to tag people because tags aren't really my thing. Let's just actually jump into the questions for now. Start off with the first question, which was titled after the song Joy to the World. So this question is, a book that brings you so much joy, the whole world should read it. I have two answers for this question, and there are a couple of other questions in this tag that have two answers as well. The first answer that I'm going to give for the Joy to the World question is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. There's not many books that I have read that I would consider to be such a joy to read that I want the whole world to read them, because a lot of my favorites, I understand why a lot of people would not like them, or I at least understand that maybe not everybody in the world should read them. That's why I have a personal answer here that I'll give justification for in a minute. The Hobbit is the real answer to this question. I think that as kind of a fantasy story, it is short enough, whimsical enough, and written in a story time type of way so that basically anybody could enjoy what's going on here. The Hobbit is definitely really joyful, really great. There's some stuff about it that isn't joyful, but it's also probably the happiest book that I could come up with for this answer. And as a complete tonal shift, my personal answer is going to be The Failures by Benjamin Lyer, despite it being a pretty dark and dismal book, literally dark, by the way, in the sense that like the world doesn't have a sun. But this is my personal answer for this because I felt like the reading experience was such a joy for myself personally. I felt like a lot of the characters were human enough that they just really jumped off the page for me. But what was really joyful about the experience of reading this book, the reason it brought me personally so much joy, is just putting together the puzzle pieces, the reveals, and the way that they're organized in this book, the just generally the masterful crafting with which Benjamin Lyer attended to The Failures is absurd and made me really happy the entire way through. I thought it was just a phenomenal execution of that idea. Worked out very well, and I loved it for that. Question number 2 is named after the song Let It Snow. This prompt is a book that takes place in a snowy or cold environment. Now, my first answer for this, when I was thinking about it, when I was going through some lists of books that I had and that I had read, was The Shining by Stephen King, because a good chunk of this takes place during the wintertime when the characters are stuck in the Overlook Hotel, and I really love The Shining, so that's kind of why it stuck out to me. But I think the real answer to this question is actually Endurance, Shackleton's incredible voyage, about a group of folk that traveled down to the Antarctic a long time ago. Somehow they all survived being essentially shipwrecked and stranded in Antarctica. But this book was thrilling. It was great. And taking place in a snowy or cold environment, you don't really get more iconically snowy or cold as Antarctica itself. So Endurance is my answer for this prompt. The next prompt is You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, a book with a mean character you did not like. I actually had a hard time coming up with an answer for this one, but I think I ultimately landed on The Picture of Dorian Gray. Now, the reason for this is because the prompt itself could be interpreted one of two ways. The first way you could interpret it is a book with a mean character you didn't like, so a character you did not like who was mean, or a book with a mean character that you didn't like, so the book you did not enjoy and it has a mean character. Whichever way you interpret it, The Picture of Dorian Gray fits for me, because I think the titular character, Dorian Gray, is kind of an asshat, and he definitely proves that in the book, and he's kind of meant to be. That is part of the point of the story itself. It's the point of The Picture of Dorian Gray's thematic portrait, pun absolutely intended in this case, but I didn't find any of that particularly sympathetic or interesting the first time that I read it. This is one I desperately need to reread to make sure that my opinion on it was valid, because I was reading this while recovering from getting my wisdom teeth removed, and I really struggled with it for reasons that I think might have been affected from that recovery process. So I'm not sure if my opinion on this book, not really liking it that much, is still a thing that I would feel if I reread it, but we'll never know until maybe someday I decide to reread it. This is my answer, though, for You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. Next up is Santa Claus is Coming to Town, a book releasing soon that you cannot wait to read, which I am technically cheating with this answer. If I were to give a real answer for this, I would say Shadows Upon Time by Christopher Rocchio, the 7th book in the Sun Eater, because that is the next book that's releasing that I can think of that I'm really hyped for, that I know I'm going to read. But I'm going to give a cheating answer because this book just came out recently, or rather by the time this video is coming out, because I'm recording this early in the month on December 5th. By the time this video is coming out, about a month ago, We Who Wrestle with God by Jordan Peterson released. One of my most anticipated releases of the year for sure. Although I haven't quite started this yet at the time that I'm recording this video, I'm starting it very soon. And the only reason why I've been waiting is because I want to push through a couple of my other current reads, make sure that that's all done so that I can start We Who Wrestle with God in a clean reading slate, so that I'm not I want to be able to focus intently on this book, but I am very excited for it, so that is why it is my answer for this. Prompt number 5, 12 Days of Christmas, asks for us to talk about a book of short stories. And since I really, when it comes to short stories, the first things that I think of at this point, for a couple different reasons, are Tales of the Sun Eater by Christopher Rocchio, the short story collections in that universe, not just because Sun Eater is my favorite series, but also because I have worked on a couple of collections. Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 4, which has not released yet, will probably come out somewhere around 6 months from now, give or take. Not entirely sure quite yet. I asked Rocchio recently when it would be releasing, but I did a copy edit for Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 4. Fangs of Owanos, which this binding is a custom made by a buddy of mine. There are only 6 of these in existence, so they're not something that are being resold or anything like that. He didn't even sell them to us because legally he can't do that because he custom made the book as well. But Fangs of Owanos does appear in Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 4, so I figured that this was worthy of showing off here for this section. That is my answer to the prompt of 12 Days of Christmas. Next up, the 6th prompt is The Little Drummer Boy, a book that brings back childhood memories, which, if you watched, let's see, what would it have been? It would have been the Thanksgiving story time video. So the video that came out on Thanksgiving last month. So I talked about in there Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss, not showing this actual book of it because, like a dummy, I didn't realize that these were right on a shelf outside of my bedroom right here, because we have a very young niece who comes over fairly often, so the child books are out there. Now I can show it in this video, which is kind of cool. Green Eggs and Ham was the first book that I read and memorized because I'm autistic and that's how things go. A very special book to me, and because of the connections of it, this one definitely does bring back childhood memories between reading it to my grandparents as a little kid at the cabin, as well as, the act of learning to read itself. Plenty of memories associated with Green Eggs and Ham, so that is why it is my answer for The Little Drummer Boy. But next up is Deck the Halls, a prompt asking for a book that has a party scene or takes place during a holiday. Now, I couldn't really properly find a book that takes place during a holiday, but I know there is a prominent scene in The Master and Margarita that has a party, and that isn't just a party in and of itself, but is based on a real life party that occurred that Bulgakov, the author, was at to some degree, and is a satirical take upon that party. So The Master of Margarita is my answer to this one for that reason, and is one of the only books that I could come up with that had a notable party that had any real significant aspect to it, or that took place during a holiday that was technically correct to actually be able to answer the prompt. So this is the answer, and a book that I should probably reread at some point in time with a translation that is not the P&V translation, because I kind of struggled with this one, even though I remember it very fondly. I want to read it with a better translation at some point in the future. Next up, the 8th and final prompt for this video that I'm going to answer is going to be Frosty the Snowman, a book with a character who's cold and or calculating. So the real answer, I believe, for this prompt for me is East of Eden by John Steinbeck, with the character of Kate/Kathy. If you've read the book, absolutely know why I have chosen this character and this book to answer this prompt. But I think for myself, the answer that I'm more drawn to, at least right now, because I'm currently reading this series, is Monster, the manga series by Naoki Urasawa. I'm currently in the middle of volume 5, which is why this is the volume that I'm holding up right now. The character Lunge, the detective Lunge, is very cold, very calculating. His calculations are all wrong, but he is a very cold and calculating character, and memorable for that reason. There is a 9th prompt for this tag, and it's called Share a Holiday Tradition, but I can't really think of any holiday traditions that we really keep anymore. We used to have a ton when I was growing up, but none of them really spring to mind as things that we do anymore. So I was like, I don't really need to talk about any of my personal holiday traditions. That feels a little bit personal, so I'm not going to answer that one, but I hope you enjoyed my bookish answers for the last 8 of these prompts. And there you have the tag. What would your answers to any of these questions, or rather these prompts, be? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. If you did, I'll be back in the next one, whatever that may be. If I'm not mistaken, that'll be this Sunday, and it'll be a video talking about my 2025 reading plan. So basically a general TBR of everything that I hope/plan to read in 2025. I hope you stick around to watch that, but I'll be back in the next video regardless, and I hope to see you there.